Kareem Campbell has been dead for 13 years. Tonight, he discovers why some patterns are older than words, and why something has been waiting for him to find them. A 7-pointed symbol that shouldn't exist, a conspiracy spanning the solar system, and 72 hours to choose between survival and something worse. In a black site where no one can hear you scream, Kareem is about to learn that some cages aren't meant to keep you in, they're meant to keep something else out. This is Chapter 3 of The Veiled Constant, The Tinkerman's Cage. If you're new here, you're entering a dark sci-fi universe where cosmic horror meets corporate conspiracy, where the line between human and something else is dangerously thin. New parts drop every other Tuesday. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when Kareem makes his choice and who he will buck up in the future. Now, let's begin. The Veiled Constant. Chapter 3, The Tinkerman's Cage. 2 days after Ganymede. Part 1, The Discovery. The symbol appeared at 3:47 station time. Kareem Campbell stared at his monitor, unable to look away from the impossible geometry pulsing on his screen. 7 points of light arranged in a constellation he didn't recognize. And at the center, angles that hurt to perceive. Surfaces that curved in ways that violated everything he'd learned about three-dimensional space. Beautiful, terrible, wrong, and achingly, impossibly familiar. His hands trembled on the keyboard, sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the black site's climate control. Something deep in his chest was responding to the pattern. Not his heart, but something below that. Something primal that existed beneath conscious thought. Recognition. What a blood clot, he whispered. The words triggered a memory sharp as broken glass. His grandmother's kitchen in Kingston, age 7. She's drawing patterns in cornmeal on the floor, murmuring in patois so thick he barely understands. The sunset paints everything orange. Her fingers move in precise gestures, tracing shapes that shimmer in the fading light. Some patterns older than words, Kareem, she says, without looking up. Older than people. You see them in dreams sometimes, in that space between waking and sleeping, where the world shows its true face. What they mean, Granny. She looks at him then, her eyes dark and knowing. They call into something, waiting for the ones who can answer. You feel it? Young Kareem nods. Even though he doesn't understand, he does feel it. A pull, like gravity, like coming home to a place he's never been. The memory dissolved. Kareem was back in the present, in a black site orbiting an unstable moon, staring at a pattern that had just reached across 13 years and 7 light minutes to remind him. Some things waited forever for the right moment to be found. He forced himself to look away from the symbol, to breathe, to think. His terminal chimed. A message from Commander Shepard. Status update. What have you found? Ha 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 ha. Some fuckery is what he found. 7 hours ago, Shepard had dropped 3 terabytes of encrypted data on his terminal with instructions that made his instincts whisper warnings. Financial irregularities, cover-ups, facility incidents. Priority classification. Report directly to her, no one else. That last part was what made Kareem's survival instinct scream. Kareem Campbell had been dead for 13 years. Legally, officially, bureaucratically dead. His birth certificate sealed. His criminal record expunged. His biometric data scrubbed from every database that mattered. The man who'd run scams for the Chimera Syndicate, who'd hacked corporate security systems from a cramped apartment in Kingston, who'd watched his grandmother bleed out on their kitchen floor. That man had ceased to exist the day he took the government's deal. Now he was just Asset K7, information broker for a black site that didn't appear on any official registry, orbiting a moon that most navigation charts listed as uninhabited and unstable, a void, which was exactly how they wanted it. And in 13 years, as Asset K7, Commander Shepard had never asked for private reporting. Everything went through official channels, logged and archived, part of the Black Site's standard operational protocol. But this was off book, which meant either Shepard didn't trust someone in the chain of command, or she was running her own game. Either way, Kareem was caught in the middle. It started with routine analysis, financial records from corporate subsidiaries, import-export, medical supplies, mining operations. Nothing unusual at first glance. Then he'd found the gaps. Transactions shifted by decimal points, small enough to pass automated audits, but large enough to notice if you were looking. Money moving through shell corporations in patterns that scream money laundering. He'd seen this before, back when he'd run the Chimera Syndicate's crypto laundering operations from a cramped apartment in Kingston, moving millions through networks so complex that even the people paying him couldn't track where their money went. But this was bigger, more coordinated. Too many companies across too many jurisdictions. Kareem had pulled up secondary databases, cross-referencing the corporate identities with public records, started building a network map of ownership structures and financial flows. The kind of work that used to take him days now took minutes. 13 years of practice had made him very, very good. 3 hours in, the pattern had emerged. Every company, every single one, had experienced an incident in the last 7 years. Equipment failures, fires, structural collapses, all labeled as accidents, all investigated and closed with suspicious speed. Kareem had pulled the forensic reports. They were too clean, too convenient, too perfectly concluded, as if someone had written the reports before the incidents even happened. "Rasclat," he'd muttered, his fingers flying across the interface. Somebody been cleaning house and putting the kids to bed. He'd pulled up incident reports from coalition databases, looking for similar patterns. Found 6 more facility disasters across the belt and outer system. Different companies, different causes, all closed as accidents, and all connected to the same financial networks he'd been tracing. Someone was destroying facilities, covering it up, and using financial manipulation to hide the connections. But why? What were these facilities? What made them worth destroying? He'd started pulling operational records, manufacturing specs, personnel files, anything that would tell him what these places actually did. That's when his terminal had flagged something odd. One of the destroyed facilities, a research station on Titan, had encrypted backup files stored on a server farm in the belt. The encryption was military grade, coalition intelligence level security, the kind of protection you used when the data was worth more than the facility that generated it, worth more than lives. Kareem had grinned despite himself. He'd cut his teeth breaking coalition encryption back in Kingston, had refined those skills over 13 years, working for the same people who'd created those security protocols. He knew their patterns, their weaknesses, the little shortcuts programmers left because they assumed no one would ever be smart enough or motivated enough to find them. They were wrong. 45 minutes to crack the first layer. His fingers had moved with practiced precision, finding the vulnerabilities, exploiting the assumptions. Another hour to get through the second layer. This one harder, more paranoid, but still following predictable patterns. By the time he'd reached the third layer, 5 hours had passed, and Kareem's eyes were burning from staring at code. His back ached from hunching over his terminal. His mouth tasted like stale coffee and recycled air, but he was in. The files were research data, experimental, something called Project Threshold. No explanation of what that meant, just thousands of documents detailing tests, procedures, results. Kareem had started reading, and with each file, his stomach had grown tighter. They'd been testing something on people, prisoners most likely, though the files were careful never to specify where the test subjects came from. Just ID numbers and biological data, ages, medical histories, psychological profiles. The test involved exposure to something the files called resonance fields, attempts to measure human response to certain geometric patterns, brain activity mapping during perception of specific visual stimuli. Most subjects showed no response. Some showed mild neurological distress, headaches, nausea, disorientation that lasted hours or days. A few, maybe 1 in 500, showed what the researchers called harmonic synchronization. Those subjects were marked for advanced testing, and then the files about them stopped. No conclusions, no results, no final reports, just cessation of data, as if those people had simply ceased to exist, as if they'd been erased from reality itself. Kareem had sat back in his chair, feeling sick. He'd done a lot of things in his life he wasn't proud of, had run scams that ruined people, had hacked systems that got innocent people fired or arrested, had helped the Chimera Syndicate move money that funded violence across the belt. But this was different. This was governments and corporations experimenting on human beings like they were lab rats, testing them until they broke, marking the interesting ones for advanced testing, and then making them disappear. And then someone had destroyed the facilities, wiped them clean, covered it up, made sure whatever project threshold was, it stayed buried. Why? Kareem had kept digging, found more files, more facilities, more experiments, all following the same pattern, all testing human response to these resonance fields, all eventually destroyed, the data scrubbed, the incidents labeled as accidents. Someone was cleaning house, erasing evidence, making sure whatever truth Project Threshold had discovered stayed hidden. But they'd missed these backup files, missed the financial trail, missed the connections that Kareem was now mapping across his monitors. He'd pulled up the visual stimuli files, wanted to see what patterns they'd been showing these test subjects, what could possibly generate harmonic synchronization in human brains. The file had loaded slowly, encrypted, protected, multiple layers of security around what should have been just an image, as if the image itself was dangerous. When it finally rendered on his screen, that's when everything changed. 7 points of light, that impossible geometry at the center, angles that made his eyes hurt, surfaces that curved wrong, and that feeling, that deep, visceral recognition, as if he'd known this symbol his entire life, as if it had been waiting inside him, just waiting for him to see it clearly. Now, staring at the symbol again after reading 7 hours of research data, Kareem felt his grandmother's voice echo across the years. Some patterns older than words, Kareem. They call into something. He thought it was superstition, island mysticism for old people who didn't understand science and technology. But what if his grandmother had known something he'd dismissed? What if there really were patterns in the world that most people couldn't see? What if some people, like the test subjects who showed harmonic synchronization, could perceive what others couldn't? What if he was one of them? Another memory surfaced, unbidden, more recent than childhood, sharper, a flash of something. His childhood home in Kingston, corrugated metal roof painted rust red by sunset. His grandmother in the kitchen, moving through ritual, cornmeal scattered in patterns on the worn linoleum floor. 7 points, 7 candles. Her voice rising and falling in patois, so thick he could barely understand it. Words from before his time, from before Jamaica, from somewhere old and dark and powerful. And standing in the doorway, watching, a man, smiling, features blurred in childhood memory, but familiar somehow. Family maybe, a distant uncle, the man's eyes tracking the pattern his grandmother made, and in those eyes, recognition. The memory faded. Kareem blinked, disoriented. He hadn't thought about that night in years, decades, had almost convinced himself he'd imagined it. But the symbol on his screen pulsed, just his tired eyes surely, and he felt that same recognition, as if the pattern and the memory were connected, as if his grandmother's rituals and these corporate experiments were touching the same fundamental truth from different angles. Then came the darker memory, the one he could never forget. He's 16, standing in their kitchen. His grandmother is on the floor, blood spreading beneath her, in a dark pool that catches the afternoon light streaming through the window. The Chimera Syndicate's enforcers had gotten the wrong address, meant to hit a rival safe house. Found her instead. 5 bullets. She'd taken 5 bullets meant for someone else. Kareem. Her voice is weak, fading with each breath. Listen, baby. You got something special. Something they're gonna want. Don't let them. She coughs. Blood on her lips, on her teeth. Don't let them make you a tool. You hear me? You're more than what they see. Granny, please, stay with me. His hands are pressing on wounds that won't stop bleeding. His grandmother's blood warm and slick between his fingers. Promise me. Promise you remember who you are, not what they make you. I promise, Granny, I promise. But the light was already fading from her eyes. Her chest rose once more, twice, then stopped. 3 days later, in that interrogation room, he'd made a different promise to the government agents who offered him a deal, new identity, protection for his mother, a chance to survive. He'd buried Kareem Campbell that day, became Asset K7, told himself it was survival, told himself his grandmother would understand, but he'd broken his promise to her, had let them make him exactly what they wanted, a tool. Kareem closed his eyes, but the symbol remained, burned into his retinas. 7 points pulsing like a heartbeat, or like a countdown. He saved the file to an encrypted partition, saved everything, the financial data, the incident reports, the research files, all of it. Whatever this was, it was big enough that people were willing to destroy facilities and kill to keep it hidden, which meant it was valuable. And if 13 years as a government asset had taught Kareem anything, it was that you kept your insurance policies close and your exit strategies closer. He encrypted the files with his own custom algorithm, not coalition standard, but something he designed himself back in Kingston, elegant and paranoid in equal measure. Then he created 3 redundant backups, stashed in different locations across the facility's network. If something happened to him, at least the data would survive. His terminal chimed again. Shepard, status update. What have you found? His fingers hovered over the interface. He could lie, could say he was still analyzing, could buy himself time to figure out what was really happening here, or he could tell the truth and hope Shepard was one of the good ones. Hope she was running her own investigation. Hope this wasn't a trap. But his instincts were screaming that something was very, very wrong. He typed, still working through the data, lot to process. Need another few hours, yeah. The reply came almost instantly. Understood. Report by end of shift. Priority. Kareem stared at the message, then at the symbol, then at his hands. The same hands that had held pressure on his grandmother's wounds while she died. The same hands that had signed away his identity in that interrogation room. The same hands that had just uncovered evidence of conspiracy so vast it spanned the solar system. He thought about his mother on Mars, about the deal he'd made to keep her safe, about the apartment the government provided, the pension, the monthly encrypted message that was all the contact he could risk. Still breathing. Love you. He thought about test subjects who had shown harmonic synchronization and then disappeared. And he thought about patterns older than words, about things that waited for the ones who could answer. Kareem pulled up more files, diving deeper. His shift would end in 3 hours. 3 hours to find answers before he decided what to tell Shepard. 3 hours before everything changed. Outside his workspace, the black site hummed with routine activity. Officers conducting surveillance, assets processing information, the normal rhythm of intelligence operations in a facility that officially didn't exist. None of them knew what Kareem had found. None of them knew that somewhere in the vast network of data flowing through the solar system, A pattern was emerging. 7 points, 7 people, 7 pieces being moved into position for something none of them could imagine. And Kareem Campbell, dead for 13 years, had just become one of those pieces, whether he wanted to be or not. 2 hours later, Kareem's terminal went dark. Not a power failure. Every other system in his workspace was functional. Just his terminal. Just his 3 monitors, all going black simultaneously in a way that should have been impossible. Then text appeared. White letters on black background. No interface. No operating system. Just words materializing as if typed by a ghost. "Hello, Kareem. We've been waiting for you to find us." "Miras," he whispered to himself. His blood ran cold. He hadn't touched anything, hadn't initiated any connection. The terminal was air-gapped from external networks for exactly this reason, to prevent intrusion. But someone was in his system anyway. "Who this?" he typed, his fingers steady despite the fear flooding his nervous system. "We're the people who destroyed those facilities, who erased Project Threshold, who've been watching you for 7 hours, 17 minutes, and 33 seconds. Ever since you cracked that first encryption layer." Kareem's mind raced. 7 hours. They'd been monitoring him the entire time, watching as he found the pattern, watching as he saved the files, watching as he made backups, waiting to see what he would do. What you want? The same thing you want, to understand what the symbol means, to know why 1 in 500 people can perceive it, to open the door it represents. A new image appeared on his screen, the symbol again, but this time overlaid with data, geographical coordinates, timestamps, biometric readings. 7 facilities destroyed, 7 sites where the resonance is strongest, 7 people who showed harmonic synchronization and survived the testing. The text scrolled, "You're number 7, Kareem. The last key. We've been searching for someone with your specific combination of abilities for 3 years. And if I don't want to be found, then we remove you from the equation, cleanly, efficiently. Your mother on Mars, Block 7, Unit 423. She'll receive notification that you died in a tragic accident. Very sad. She'll grieve. Life will continue, and we'll keep searching for another 7th key." The threat was delivered without emotion. Just fact, just procedure. Kareem's hands clenched into fists. "You threatening me, mother? We're explaining your situation. You have value to us. Your mother has value to you. Simple equation. Work with us, and she stays safe, comfortable, ignorant of what her son is really doing. Refuse, and we solve our problem a different way. What if I tell Commander Shepard? Commander Shepard works for the Coalition. The Coalition has its own Project Threshold initiative. If you tell her what you found, she'll turn you over to them. Their methods are less considerate than ours, and their success rate with harmonic synchronizers is approximately 12% survival. We're at 43%. Better odds with us." Kareem's analytical mind processed the information. Multiple factions, multiple agendas, all searching for the same thing. People who could perceive the pattern. People like him. "How I know you telling the truth?" The screen changed. Live video feed. His mother's apartment on Mars. She was sitting on her small balcony, watching the sunset paint the Martian sky in shades of pink and orange. A cup of tea steaming in her hands. Peaceful, safe. For now. We can reach her anytime we want. The text appeared below the video, but we'd prefer not to. She seems nice, deserves to enjoy her retirement. That's up to you. Don't be that little inept boy that got his grandmother killed so long ago. Be smart. The video feed disappeared, replaced by new text. You have 72 hours to decide. Continue your current path. Report to Shepard. Become a Coalition asset. 12% survival rate. Or come work for us. Better technology. Better resources. Better chance of surviving long enough to understand what the symbol actually means. With a frustration through his body, Kareem responded by saying, "And if I choose option 3, disappear. There is no option 3. We control the facility's transportation schedules. We monitor all communication. We've had assets embedded here for 6 years. You can't leave without us knowing. You can't contact anyone without us intercepting. Your cage has always been smaller than you realize, Kareem. We're just offering you a bigger one. The honesty was almost refreshing. No pretense. No false promises of freedom. Just a straightforward transaction. Survival in exchange for service. Just like the deal he'd made with the government. Just like every deal he'd ever made. His grandmother's voice whispered in his memory. Some cages you walk into, Kareem. Some cages walk into you. How do I contact you? He typed. You don't. We'll contact you. 3 days. Make your decision. In the meantime, file your report to Shepard. Tell her you found corporate malfeasance. Nothing about Project Threshold. Nothing about the symbol. Keep yourself useful to the coalition while you decide whether you want to work for someone more interesting. And if I tell her everything, then your mother dies first, then you. Then we find another 7th key. We're patient. We've waited millennia. We can wait a few more years if necessary. Millennia. That word hung in Kareem's mind like smoke. Not decades, not centuries, millennia. Whatever this was, it was older than he'd imagined. The text disappeared. His monitors flickered back to normal, showing his standard interface as if nothing had happened. No trace of the conversation, no logs, no evidence that anyone had been in his system, as if it had all been a hallucination. Except Kareem knew better, knew the difference between paranoia and proof, and he'd just been given proof that his cage was far smaller than he'd believed. He pulled up a new window and began composing his report to Commander Shepard. Corporate malfeasance, financial irregularities, shell corporations, everything true, but nothing dangerous. Nothing that would make mysterious people decide his mother needed to die. As he typed, another memory surfaced. Age 12, his grandmother teaching him to play chess in their cramped apartment. She moves a pawn forward, smiles at him with warmth and cunning. Life like chess, Kareem. Sometimes you think you're moving the pieces. Sometimes you realize you're just a piece being moved. The trick is knowing which game you're playing and who the real players are. How you tell the difference. You look for the pattern, baby. Always a pattern. In chess, in life, in everything. Find the pattern, you find the truth. Kareem looked at his monitors, at the symbols saved in his encrypted files, at the report he was writing for Shepard, at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. He could see the pattern now, could see how he'd been moved into position, how 7 hours of work had been a test, how every decision he'd made had been anticipated, allowed, orchestrated. He was a piece on a board, had been for longer than tonight. Maybe for longer than he knew. The question was, could he become a player instead? Or was that just another illusion, another cage disguised as freedom? 3 days to decide. 3 days before everything changed. Kareem finished his report and sent it to Commander Shepard. Then he pulled up the photo he kept encrypted. His mother on Mars, smiling, safe, ignorant of what her son had become. I'm sorry, Mama, he whispered. I'm trying. I promise I'm trying. But he didn't know what he was trying to do anymore. Survive, protect her, understand the pattern, or just delay the inevitable for a few more days. Outside his workspace, the black site continued its routine. Officers on patrol, assets at their stations, the machinery of intelligence grinding forward. And somewhere in the vast dark between stars, 7 points of light pulsed with ancient rhythm, waiting, always waiting, for the ones who could answer. End of Part 1. Part 2. The Cage. Day 1 felt like drowning in slow motion. Kareem went through the routines, attended the morning briefing, nodded at the intelligence updates, processed secondary data requests from other assets, ate lunch in the communal cafeteria where 43 people pretended they weren't all trapped together in a repurposed mining station orbiting a moon that didn't officially exist. Everything normal, everything routine, except he could feel their eyes on him. Not paranoia, not this time. Asset K7 had survived by reading rooms, by sensing when the temperature changed, when people's body language shifted in ways that meant danger. And today, everyone was watching him differently. Commander Shepard passed him in the corridor. Their eyes met for half a second. She looked away first, her jaw tight, her shoulders carrying weight that hadn't been there yesterday. She knew something, or suspected something, or had been told something. The message on his terminal had said they'd had assets embedded here for 6 years, which meant someone in this facility, maybe multiple someones, worked for the people who threatened his mother, who'd given him 72 hours to decide between survival and bad luck survival. Who were they? The woman from operations who always smiled too precisely. The security officer who asked too many casual questions. Commander Shepard herself. Trust no one. The first rule of intelligence work. The first rule of staying alive. Kareem returned to his workspace and locked the door, pulled up his monitoring systems, the ones he'd hacked years ago that let him see what the facility's official security saw. Nothing unusual. Standard patrols, standard activity. But if there were embedded assets, they'd know about his monitoring, would act normal when cameras were watching, would only reveal themselves when it was too late to matter. He pulled up the symbol again, stared at those 7 points, that impossible geometry, felt that same recognition, that same pull towards something he couldn't name. 1 in 500, the message had said. Your number 7, the last key. What did that mean? 7 people with harmonic synchronization. 7 keys to open what? A door. But to where? To what? Kareem started searching through the Project Threshold files again, looking for patterns he'd missed, references to other test subjects, other facilities, other pieces of this vast puzzle. He found mentions of convergence events, times when multiple harmonic synchronizers had been brought together. The data was fragmented, heavily redacted, but certain words kept appearing. Resonance cascade, threshold breach, dimensional instability, and then buried in a file marked with triple encryption, subjects 7, 12, and 19 brought into proximity at Site Gamma. Resonance achieved 47% synchronization before subjects experienced catastrophic neural trauma. Site evacuated. 2 subjects deceased, 1 subject missing. Presume lost to threshold event. Recommend wider separation protocols for future testing. Kareem's blood went cold. They tried bringing harmonic synchronizers together before, and it had killed them, or worse, made them disappear into whatever threshold event meant. So why were these new people collecting 7 keys? What made them think they could succeed where others had failed? Unless they didn't care about success. Unless the 7 keys were expendable, tools to be used and discarded in pursuit of something larger. His terminal chimed. Not a message from Shepard, not official traffic, just text appearing directly on his screen again. Stop digging, Kareem. You're looking at old failures. We've learned since then. Develop better protocols, better technology, better understanding of what causes cascade failures. You're not in danger from the process. You're only in danger from yourself if you keep asking questions we're not ready to answer. They were watching, real time, monitoring what files he accessed, what searches he ran, what conclusions he drew. The cage was even smaller than he thought. He typed, "You expect me to trust you when you won't answer basic questions about what you're trying to do? We expect you to be smart. You've read the files. You know the Coalition's Project Threshold has a 12% survival rate. You know they're still using old methods, old theories, treating harmonic synchronizers like lab rats instead of partners. We're offering you something better, but you have to choose it. We can't force you to be willing." Can't or won't? Both. The process requires consent, requires active participation, Fear and coercion create resistance that interferes with resonance. We need you willing, Kareem, or we need you dead. Those are the only options that don't compromise the entire project. The honesty was chilling. They needed his cooperation, which gave him leverage, but they were also willing to kill him if he refused, which meant the leverage was limited. Classic game theory, except the stakes were his life and his mother's safety. 2 more days, the text continued. Think about it. We'll be in touch. The screen went back to normal. Kareem sat in silence, his mind racing through scenarios. All of them ended badly. All of them left him trapped. His grandmother's voice. Some cages you walk into. Some cages walk into you. He'd walked into this one, volunteered even, signed the papers in that interrogation room thinking he was choosing survival. But the cage had been waiting all along, had been designed for him specifically, for people like him who could perceive patterns others couldn't, for harmonic synchronizers, for keys. That evening, Kareem lay in his quarters with his eyes closed, body still, breathing steady and measured. Anyone watching the surveillance feed would see Asset K7 sleeping. But Kareem hadn't slept in 24 hours. Couldn't, wouldn't. The moment he let his guard down, the moment he surrendered to exhaustion, that's when they'd come for him. He'd learned that lesson at 16. Paranoia wasn't madness. Paranoia was survival. So he lay there in the dark, counting his heartbeats, listening to the facility's ambient sounds, the hum of ventilation, the distant footsteps of guards on patrol, the tick and whisper of systems maintaining an artificial environment on a dead moon. And then, something else. A sound that didn't belong. So faint he almost missed it beneath the mechanical chorus. The whisper of a door seal breaking. Not his door. He'd have heard that clearly, but somewhere close. Kareem's eyes stayed closed. His breathing stayed steady, but every nerve in his body went electric. Someone was moving through the facility. Someone who knew how to move quietly. Someone who understood surveillance systems and patrol patterns and how to exploit the gaps between them. Someone like him, or someone sent for him. He counted seconds, mapped the sound in his mind. Footsteps, barely audible, but there, coming closer, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd done this before. Someone professional. His door security panel chirped softly. Override code being entered. Not emergency access. That would have triggered alarms. This was authorized entry. Someone with legitimate credentials, or someone who'd stolen them. The door hissed open, a whisper of air pressure equalizing, then silence so complete it screamed. Kareem kept his eyes closed, kept his breathing steady, every muscle in his body coiled tight beneath the illusion of sleep. He could feel them in the room, a presence, a disturbance in the air that came from another human being occupying space, breathing, existing. Watching him, the figure moved closer, silent, patient. Kareem tracked them by sound and air displacement. 3 meters, 2, 1.5. Close enough to touch, close enough to kill. He felt the shift in air pressure as they raised their arm, felt the killing intent crystallize into action, felt the moment stretch and compress like reality itself was holding its breath. Kareem moved, rolled left, fast, off the bed. His arm shot out, bent at the elbow as a defensive move, blocking a downward movement where he knew the figure's arm would be. Then grabbed for the arm. His fingers closed around fabric and flesh, cold, professional, moving with trained precision to compensate for his dodge and parry. He pulled hard, used the figure's own momentum against them, felt them stumble, their balance compromised, heard the soft thud of something hitting the floor. A weapon, probably. Something designed to kill quietly. They recovered fast, faster than Kareem expected. A professional, trained in close quarters combat in ways he'd never been. His survival skills came from street fights and desperate scrambles, not military conditioning. A fist came out of the darkness. Kareem felt it before he saw it, blocked on instinct, his forearm taking an impact that sent lightning up his nerves. They were strong, stronger than him, better trained, which meant if this became a fair fight, he was dead. Kareem didn't fight fair. He lunged low, driving his shoulder into their midsection. Wrestling, not striking. Get close, get tangled, make their training less effective. He grabbed, clawed, fought with the desperate savagery of someone who'd learned combat in Kingston alleys where rules were a luxury and survival was the only victory that mattered. They went down together, hit the floor hard. Kareem on top by accident, more than design. He felt them twist, trying to reverse the position, trying to apply some technique that would end this quickly and professionally. His hand found their throat, squeezed, not enough to crush. He didn't have the strength for that, but enough to choke, to cut off air, to make them panic. They drove an elbow into his ribs. Pain exploded white hot. Something cracked. Kareem gasped, his grip loosening. The figure twisted, got an arm free. Kareem saw the blade in their hand, too late. Emergency lighting catching on metal. A flash of recognition that came with the certainty of his own death. The knife descended. Kareem caught their wrist, barely. His hand locked around theirs with all the strength desperation could provide. The blade stopped centimeters from his throat. He could feel the tip pressing against his skin, could feel the cool promise of steel. They pushed. Kareem pushed back. His arms trembled. His broken ribs screamed. The blade inched closer, closer. The figure's professional calm giving way to frustrated effort. And in that moment, straining against death with every fiber of his being, Kareem understood something terrible. He was going to have to kill them. Not in abstract, not in theory. Actually kill another human being. Feel them die under his hands. Cross a line he'd spent 13 years avoiding. The alternative was his own death. Kareem twisted, used the assassin's forward momentum against them, redirected the knife. The blade missed his throat, gouged a line of fire across his shoulder instead. He barely felt it through the adrenaline. His other hand found their face, fingers searching in the dark, found an eye, thumb pressing inward with sickening pressure. The figure made a sound, the first sound they'd made since entering. A choke scream, muffled, human and terrible. They thrashed. The knife fell. Kareem grabbed for it, but his hands were slick. Blood, sweat. He didn't know which. His fingers closed on empty air. The figure was stronger. Even injured, even panicked, they were getting the advantage, pushing him off. Kareem felt himself being reversed. Felt his back hit the floor, felt hands closing around his throat. Professional grip, thumbs on his windpipe, pressure building, darkness creeping in at the edges of his vision that had nothing to do with the room's lighting. His grandmother's voice, "Fight dirty, Kareem. Ain't no shame in surviving." Kareem's hands scrabbled across the floor, found something metal, part of his desk assembly, knocked loose in the struggle, heavy, solid. He swung. The impact was wet, solid. The sound of metal meeting skull. The pressure on his throat released instantly. The figure collapsed on top of him. Dead weight. Literal dead weight. Kareem pushed them off. Gasped for air. His throat felt crushed. Every breath a razor. His ribs screamed. His shoulder burned where the knife had caught him. But he was alive. The figure on the floor wasn't moving. Kareem checked for a pulse with trembling fingers. Found nothing, just cooling flesh and stillness. He'd killed them. The reality of it hit him like a second blow. He'd taken a life, actually done it. His hands, these hands that coded elegant algorithms and solved impossible problems, were now stained with death. He wanted to vomit, wanted to scream, wanted to wake up and discover this was just another nightmare. But corpses didn't vanish when you wanted them to. Was this a test? Had they sent an assassin to see if Kareem would kill? To see if he had what it took to become one of the 7 keys? Or was this a rival faction, eliminating a harmonic synchronizer before they could secure him? It didn't matter. The corpse was the immediate problem. Kareem forced himself to think, to calculate. The body was evidence. If anyone found it, questions would be asked. Investigations launched. They would know he'd killed someone, would recalculate his threat level, might decide he was too dangerous to recruit, might decide his mother needed to become leverage of a different kind. He had to hide the body, had to make this disappear. 14 minutes later, Kareem stood in the server room on Sublevel 1, Section C, a place nobody visited unless systems were critically failing. Automated cooling, automated maintenance, automated everything. The perfect tomb for someone who needed to disappear. He dragged the body through corridors, timing his movements to patrol patterns, moving through shadows, every step agony from his broken rib. The maintenance access panel in the floor opened to reveal a crawl space, barely a meter high, filled with cable runs and coolant pipes. A place maintenance workers might access once every few years, if that. Perfect. He pushed the body into the crawl space, watched it disappear into darkness, sealed the panel, wiped everything down. Evidence disappeared, problem solved, except for the blood on his hands. The literal blood he could wash off, the metaphorical blood that would never come clean. Kareem made his way back to his quarters, cleaned his wounds, bandaged his shoulder with medical supplies from his emergency kit, took painkillers that barely touched the agony in his ribs. Then he sat on his bed, now without sheets, without evidence, and stared at his hands in the emergency lighting. He'd killed someone, actually done it. Crossed a line he couldn't uncross. And the worst part, the part that made his stomach turn, was that he felt relief, gratitude that it was them instead of him, that his survival had come at the cost of someone else's death. Asset K7 wouldn't have felt that way. Asset K7 was a ghost, a fiction, a man who died 13 years ago. But Kareem Campbell, the real Kareem, the boy from Kingston who'd lost his grandmother, who'd spent 13 years in a cage. He felt it and knew that something fundamental had changed inside him. The cage hadn't just trapped him, it had transformed him into something that could kill, into something that would kill, into something that had killed, into exactly what they needed him to be. Day 2 was different. Kareem moved through the facility with new eyes. Every person he passed was a potential threat. Every conversation overheard was potential intelligence. Every system he accessed was potentially monitored. The paranoia had metastasized from instinct into operational procedure. He still ached from the fight. His ribs sent lightning through his chest with every breath. The bandage on his shoulder itched beneath his shirt, but he moved normally. Projected calm, gave no indication that anything had changed. Asset K7, professional and controlled, but beneath the surface, Kareem Campbell was calculating, planning, preparing for what came next. Because day 2 also brought something else, people. Kareem had survived 13 years in cages by making temporary connections, by finding warmth in cold places, by reminding himself he was still human, through brief encounters with others who understood the weight of isolation. Irina, the night shift communications officer on Ganymede Station 3 years ago. Russian accent, thick as vodka, lonely eyes, and a smile that said she knew exactly what they both needed. They'd found excuses to be in the same maintenance corridors. Quick encounters in server rooms where the surveillance had convenient blind spots. Nothing romantic. Just warmth in the cold. 2 people reminding each other they were still human. Before that, Dr. Maya Jao on series. Sharp mind, sharper wit, and hands that knew how to take apart both bodies and lies. She'd appreciated his cleverness, the way he'd unlocked her encrypted terminal just to prove he could, then left a single file, a poem he'd written in Jamaican patois about the beauty of brilliant women. They'd had 6 weeks before her rotation ended, enough time to learn each other's scars, not enough time for either of them to pretend it was more than temporary refuge. And here, on this nameless black site facility, there had been Svetlana, logistics coordinator, Ukrainian heritage, runner's build, and a pragmatism that matched his own. She understood the cage they lived in, understood that comfort was stolen in moments, not built over years. 3 months now, not quite love, not quite convenience, something honest in its limitations. Kareem knew women, knew desire, knew how to read interest and respond, how to make loneliness feel like connection for a few stolen hours, knew the dance. His grandmother would have called it making do, finding sweetness where you could, taking warmth when the cold pressed in, surviving not just physically, but emotionally, keeping your heart beating even when your life was measured in asset numbers and encrypted messages. But on day 2, everything about those connections felt fragile, because Kareem tried to see Svetlana, needed to talk to her, though he couldn't explain why, couldn't tell her about the symbol or the threats, or the body hidden in the server room crawl space. But when he passed her in the corridor, she looked away, hurried past, as if she'd been warned or threatened. He tried again at lunch, caught her eye across the cafeteria. She stood immediately, abandoned her tray, walked out, avoiding him, deliberately, completely. Had they gotten to her, shown her the same tablet they'd used on Commander Shepard, made promises wrapped in threats? Or was this simpler? Had Svetlana sensed the change in him, the blood on his hands that no amount of washing could remove, the transformation from Asset K7 into something darker? Either way, the message was clear. He was alone, more alone than he'd been in 13 years. The cage was closing, and everyone he'd ever touched for warmth was being stripped away. On the afternoon of day 2, Kareem's terminal chimed with an official notification. 3 new arrivals, V1, V2, V3. Visitors on a black site that didn't exist. On a moon, the charts called unstable and uninhabited. And they'd gone to sub-level 3. Kareem's blood went cold. Sub-level 3, where they kept the interrogation suites, where enhanced techniques was just polite language for breaking a man into pieces and cataloging what spilled out. He'd seen those rooms once, 13 years ago, during intake. They'd walked him past them like a tour of hell's basement, shown him what happened to assets who forgot their place, who thought they could slip the leash. The screaming still played in his nightmares sometimes, the medical equipment gleaming under fluorescent lights, the understanding, cold and final, that his deal wasn't protection, just a stay of execution. The visitors had spent 2 hours down there, preparing. He pulled up surveillance, fingers moving with practiced efficiency, until he found them. Conference room, 3 people with Commander Shepard, 2 men in expensive suits that scream corporate power, and a woman. Even through the surveillance feed's limited resolution, even across the distance of digital transmission, Kareem felt something cold slide through him. She was devastating, not beautiful. Beauty was too simple, too kind a word. This woman was something else, something that made Kareem forget how to breathe. Early 40s, but timeless. Dark hair pulled back severe enough to cut glass. Professional silk blouse and tailored skirt that managed to be both corporate and predatory. The kind of woman who belonged on magazine covers or most wanted lists. But it wasn't her appearance that made his skin crawl. It was her eyes. Even through the camera's limited resolution, he could see it, the way she looked at Commander Shepard. Not with contempt or superiority or any emotion he could name. With ownership. Like Shepard was a tool she was evaluating, a resource to be used or discarded based on utility. And Shepard, iron-spined Shepard, who'd stared down coalition inspectors without flinching, who'd run this black site for 8 years with absolute authority. Shepard was afraid, real fear, the kind you couldn't fake. The kind that came from understanding exactly what this woman was capable of and knowing you couldn't stop it. The woman was talking. Kareem zoomed the camera, but acoustic dampening turned her words to pantomime. He could only watch, Shepard's shoulders tightening, hands clasped like prayer. The woman said something. Shepard shook her head, firm, final. The woman smiled, slow, patient. The kind of smile that promised things worse than death. Then she pulled out a tablet, showed Shepard something on the screen. Shepard went statue still. The color drained from her face, like life from a corpse. She nodded, once, twice. The nod of a woman signing her soul away. The woman stood, graceful as a panther. The men followed. They left Shepard sitting alone in that conference room, staring at nothing. And Kareem knew exactly how she felt. He tracked them through the cameras. They walked with purpose, no hesitation. They knew where they were going. To him. 5 minutes, maybe less. 5 minutes to decide between running and dying. And the joke was both options ended the same way. He couldn't run. This was a black site on a dead moon. No ships without authorization. No escape hatches except the ones that led to vacuum. He was trapped, had been for 13 years. But those 5 minutes stretched like eternity as Kareem sat at his terminal, staring at the surveillance feed showing 3 figures walking purposefully through corridors toward his workspace, toward him. And all he could think about was the woman's eyes, the way she'd looked at Commander Shepard, the ownership in that gaze, the promise of what was coming. His workspace door hissed open. She stood there. End of Part 2. Part 3. The Storm. Up close, she was devastating, not beautiful. Beauty was too simple, too kind a word. Svetlana was beautiful. Maya Zhao had been beautiful. Irina's smile in the dark had been beautiful. No, she was something else, something that didn't belong to ordinary rules. Men didn't just notice her, they reacted to her. Instinct took over before thought could catch up. Desire hit first, sharp and immediate, tangled with something darker, something that felt like danger dressed in beauty. There was a tension around her, thick and electric. It stirred impulses men didn't fully understand. Control and surrender, dominance and reverence, all colliding at once. Being near her felt like standing too close to a flame. You knew better, but you didn't step away. She didn't need to touch anyone to take hold of them. A glance was enough. A pause in her movement, a shift in her breathing. It all carried weight. Men felt exposed around her, stripped down to instinct, like she could see straight through the layers they hid behind. Kareem felt it hit him harder than anything he'd known. His chest tightened, his thoughts scattered, and for a moment, nothing else existed. Not his past, not his name, just her, as if she had stepped into his world and quietly claimed it without asking. Early 40s but timeless, silk blouse the color of good whiskey, cut to professional standards, but worn in a way that suggested things that had nothing to do with corporate hierarchy. Skirt that stopped at appropriate but promised transgression. Dark red lipstick that looked almost black in certain light. A predator's mouth. And those eyes, dark, intelligent, predatory, looking at him with an intensity that felt like being dissected. She moved like liquid danger, every step calculated, every gesture precise. The 2 men flanked her like shadows, professional and practiced, but Kareem couldn't look away from her. Mr. Campbell, her voice was smoke and honey and dark promises, cultured, precise. The kind of voice that could order your execution or seduce you into bed, and you'd thank her either way. Or should I call you Asset K7? She paused, lips curving, though I suspect you prefer Kareem. The way she said his name, his real name, the one Asset K7 had buried 13 years ago, felt like being touched. Like violation, like recognition. She was already inside his workspace. The question was courtesy masquerading as manners. Kareem leaned back, projecting calm he didn't feel, let his lips curve into the smile that had worked on Svetlana, thickened his accent just enough, the island charm that usually disarmed. Seem like you already here. What can I do for you, miss? Torres. She smiled, slow, knowing, and somehow that smile said, I see you trying to charm me, and it's adorable how futile that is. Rebecca Torres, and let's skip the performance, darling. The endearment should have been flirtatious. Instead, it felt like being claimed. We both know you're brilliant. She moved closer, too closer. Close enough he could smell her perfume, jasmine, and something darker, muskier, something expensive and dangerous. We both know you've already mapped 17 different scenarios for this conversation. Another step. So let's be honest with each other. She sat in the chair across from him, crossed her legs with deliberate grace. The skirt slit, revealing skin from ankle to mid-thigh. The movement should have been sexual, was sexual, objectively, but the way she did it felt like a spider arranging its web. The two men blocked the door, professional and practiced, but Rebecca commanded the room like a queen holding court. You found Project Threshold. Her eyes never left his. Dark eyes, intelligent, predatory. Found the facilities, found the cover-ups, found the symbol. She glanced at his monitor where the 7 points still glowed. And you felt something when you saw it. Recognition, connection, something deeper than memory. Kareem said nothing. His usual charm had abandoned him. All he could do was watch her like you'd watch a beautiful snake. This wasn't seduction. This was something else, something worse. That recognition is why you're valuable, Kareem. The way she said his name felt intimate, dangerous, like she owned it, owned him. 1 in 500 test subjects showed harmonic synchronization. 1 in 500 could perceive the pattern, could feel it calling to something in their genetic code. She paused. Their soul, if you want to be poetic about it. And the other 499 died, or went insane, or simply showed no response and were released. She said it like discussing the weather. Matter of fact, clinical. The pattern is selective. It only calls to those who can answer. She leaned forward. The movement drew his eyes to the curve of her throat, the shadow between her breasts, the pulse point that spoke of life and warmth beneath the predator's mask. She knew it would. Everything about her was calculated to distract, to disarm, to make men lower their guard. But this wasn't about sex. That would have been simpler, safer. The world is changing, she said softly, intimately, like sharing secrets in the dark, has been changing for 7 years. Powerful people have discovered something old, something that predates human civilization, and they're trying to understand it, control it. She paused. Use it. Project Threshold. Project Threshold is one name. She pulled out a tablet, showed him images, the symbol in different forms, cave paintings, ancient artifacts, satellite imagery of ruins on moons humans had never colonized. This symbol appears across the solar system, in places we've never been, in structures older than our species. And what does it mean? Rebecca's smile widened. Dangerous, beautiful, terrible. That's what we're trying to discover. That's why we need people like you. She reached out, one finger tracing the edge of his desk, not touching him, not yet, but the implication clear. People who can perceive the pattern, who can work with the data without their minds breaking. Her eyes met his, who have the skills we need and the harmonic synchronization that makes them. She paused. Useful? Useful for what? For opening the door. Absolute certainty in her voice. Not madness, not fanaticism. Something worse. Genuine belief. That symbol is a door, Kareem. 7 points. 7 keys. 7 people who can work together to open what's been locked for millennia. And what's behind the door? Rebecca stood. Graceful. Commanding. She moved around his workspace like she owned it, like she owned him, and stopped behind his chair. Kareem felt every nerve in his body scream to track her movement, but he forced himself to remain still. Answers, power, evolution. Her voice came from behind him now, close. He could feel her presence like heat from a flame, the end of human limitation. She paused. Or destruction. We won't know until we open it. Her fingers touched his shoulder. Light, barely contact, but Kareem felt it like electricity. This was wrong. He'd been touched before. Svetlana's hands on his skin, Maya's fingers in his hair, Irina's breath against his neck. But Rebecca's touch felt different. Not sexual, not comforting, claiming. But it's going to open, Kareem. Her fingers trailed along his collarbone, feather light, with your help or without it. The only question is whether you want to be part of what comes after, or whether you want to die in this black site, another asset number forgotten by history. She moved back into his line of sight, and Kareem could breathe again, could think again, but the ghost of her touch remained burning against his skin. You threaten me, mother, he said quietly, forcing words past the tightness in his throat. Tell me she's safe for now. That's not a choice. That's coercion. It's reality, Rebecca said. She leaned against his desk, close enough he could see the pulse in her throat, the slight parting of her lips as she spoke. Your mother is leverage. We use what works. She tilted her head, studying him. But understand this. We're not the only ones looking for people like you. Coalition intelligence, belt separatists, criminal syndicates, including the Chimera syndicate you used to work for. They're all searching for harmonic synchronizers. She let that sink in. You think we're the threat? We're offering you protection, purpose. Her voice dropped, intimate again, almost gentle. A chance to matter. The alternatives are worse, much worse. She moved closer again, always closer, invading his space until his back was against the chair and she was standing between him and escape. I know about Svetlana, she said softly, the logistics coordinator. Your current arrangement, 3 months now, isn't it? Her hand came up, fingers ghosting along the arm of his chair, not touching him, not quite, but close enough he could feel the heat. She's lovely, practical, understands the cage you both live in, makes loneliness feel like something manageable. Kareem's jaw tightened. And before her, Dr. Maya Zhao on series, 6 weeks. You liked her brilliance, didn't you? The way she appreciated your cleverness, made you feel seen as more than just an asset number. Violation. This was violation of something private, something that had been his in a life when nothing belonged to him. And before that, Irina, quick encounters in server rooms, nothing romantic, just... Rebecca's voice dropped to a purr. Warmth in the dark. Don't. Kareem started. Don't worry. Rebecca's hand moved from the chair to his face, cupped his cheek. Gentle, tender, horrifying. Your secret's safe. I don't care who you fuck to feel human again. She held his gaze for a long moment, her thumb brushing along his jawline. The touch should have been comforting, should have been tender. Instead, it felt like being claimed, marked, owned. But you need to understand something, Kareem. She leaned in, her face inches from his, close enough to kiss if she wanted, close enough he could count her eyelashes. Those women, they chose you because you were safe, charming, non-threatening, a distraction from the monotony of black site duty. Her hand dropped away. The loss of contact felt like relief and abandonment simultaneously. I'm not them. She straightened, and suddenly there was distance between them again. Professional distance. But Kareem had seen beneath the mask now, knew what was there. I don't want comfort from you, or distraction, or your practiced island charm. She circled behind his chair again. He hated that. Hated not being able to see her, track her, defend against her. I want you to understand, she continued, voice soft near his ear, intimate in a way that made his skin crawl and his body respond simultaneously, that you belong to me now, not as a lover. Her fingers trailed along his shoulder, as a key, and keys don't get to choose which doors they open. Kareem's hands clenched. This wasn't seduction. This was psychological vivisection while maintaining horrible intimacy. What you want me to do? He forced the words out. Rebecca moved back into his line of sight, professional mask sliding back into place. For now, continue your analysis. Report to Commander Shepard that you found evidence of corporate malfeasance. Nothing about Project Threshold, nothing about the symbol, just enough to satisfy her curiosity. She moved to the door, paused, looked back at him with eyes that promised everything and nothing. Then in 3 days, you'll receive new orders, a transfer, special assignment. You'll come with us. And my mother stays safe, stays comfortable, continues receiving her pension. Rebecca's expression didn't change. Professional mask firmly in place. None of this touches her unless you make it necessary. And if I refuse, if I tell Commander Shepard everything, the smile widened. Her eyes went dark and cold as space itself. We have told you this already in our introduction to you by our ghost. Now that you know we are real, how about this? As she adjusted her sarong with a quick shake, just enough to call attention to her rear. We take you to sub-level 3. She said it casually, like discussing dinner plans. You've seen those rooms, haven't you, Kareem? During your intake, the rooms were screaming echoes off reinforced walls, where we have very skilled people who know exactly how to keep someone conscious while their body experiences things that should kill them. She leaned against the doorframe, all casual grace and lethal promise. We spent 2 hours down there today, preparing, making sure the equipment was calibrated. Commander Shepard signed off on everything. She's very cooperative when properly motivated. The professional veneer cracked just enough to show the predator beneath. Those rooms are ready for you if necessary. We'll extract every piece of information, every encryption key, every hidden file, every contact. She paused. Every woman you've ever touched. Svetlana, Maya, Irina. We'll bring them in, question them, make sure they didn't know anything. Make sure you didn't tell them anything in those quiet moments after. Her voice remained conversational, clinical, describing horror with the detachment of a doctor discussing treatment options. And then we'll move on to your mother. She'll tell us things you never thought she knew, scream things you never wanted to hear. Rebecca straightened, professional demeanor returning, like a mask sliding back into place, as if she hadn't just described torture with clinical precision. Or you can be smart, choose survival, choose purpose. She smiled, warm, inviting, deadly, and none of that happens. You see, we're giving you the better option. Most people don't get a choice at all. She turned to leave, paused at the threshold, looked back over her shoulder with a smile that would haunt his dreams. One more day, Kareem. Get your affairs in order. Say goodbye to Asset Case 7. Her voice dropped to something that might have been kindness if it came from anyone else. Say goodbye to Svetlana. I imagine she'll miss you. They always do. Her eyes held his one final time. The next time we meet, you'll be working for us, or you'll be screaming in sub-level 3. She tilted her head. Either outcome is acceptable, a pause, but I suspect you'll choose survival. You've been very good at it so far. Then she was gone, just walked out, left him sitting in the wreckage of his carefully constructed life, feeling the walls close in. Kareem sat there, heart hammering, skin still burning where she'd touched him. He'd been with women, knew desire, knew seduction, knew the dance. But Rebecca Torres had looked at him and seen exactly what he was, had touched him not with desire, but with ownership, had violated his privacy, his secrets, his connections with other women, and done it all while making it feel almost tender. That was the horror of it, not the threats, not the violence, not even the torture waiting in sub-level 3. The horror was that part of him, some traitorous broken part, had responded to her touch, had wanted to surrender to whatever she was offering, had felt something that wasn't quite fear and wasn't quite desire, but was somehow both. Svetlana had touched him with affection, Maya with appreciation, Irina with mutual need. Rebecca had touched him with claim, and his body hadn't known the difference. The day to leave the small cage. Kareem pulled up the encrypted message to his mother, typed, "Getting transferred. New assignment. Don't worry. I love you." Attached a secondary encryption key. If he died, at least she'd know why. The words felt hollow, inadequate, but they would have to be enough. Because today, Kareem Campbell would either become a key in someone else's lock, or he'd become a screaming lesson in what happened to keys that refused to turn. And Rebecca Torres would stand there either way, watching with those dark eyes, touching him with hands that claimed ownership. Later on in the day, the order came. Asset K7 is hereby assigned to Special Project Consultation. Duration, indefinite. Transport departs 2300 hours. Pack personal effects. Report to docking bay. 3 sentences. 13 years, reduced to 3 sentences. Kareem packed his duffel bag. Everything he owned fit in one bag. That's what 13 years of death had done. Reduced his existence to portable essentials. The docking bay was on the facility's outer ring. 2 armed escorts walked him through corridors, their faces carefully neutral. They knew. Everyone knew. When assets got transferred to special projects, they didn't come back. Rebecca Torres waited at the airlock. She wore civilian clothes, expensive in ways that never announced themselves. Dark slacks cut clean and fitted close, not to invite attention but to assert it. A blouse the color of aged wine, the fabric soft, the top 2 buttons undone with deliberate carelessness, like rules she didn't bother remembering. Her lipstick was the same deep red Kareem remembered, control exact. Her hair hung loose, but only as far as she allowed, pinned back by a simple clip that said containment was a choice, not a necessity. Those same dark eyes that had haunted his sleepless nights. "Kareem," she said, as if greeting an old friend. "Glad you made the smart choice. Come, we have a transport ready." "Did I have a choice?" Kareem asked, his accent thick, his duffel bag heavy on his shoulder. His ribs still ached where the assassin had struck him. "Everyone has choices. Most people just don't like their options." Rebecca gestured toward the airlock. "But you chose survival. That's wise. Your mother will continue watching sunsets. You'll continue breathing." A pause. Better than the alternative. They boarded a small personnel shuttle. Sleek, modern, military-grade propulsion. Not government. Something private. "Where we going?" Kareem asked as the airlock sealed. "Elysium Station first," Rebecca said, directing him to settling into a seat. She walked behind him, but close enough he could smell her perfume again. "Jasmine and danger. Then we'll see. Depends on how cooperative you are, how useful you prove to be." She pulled out a tablet, began scrolling through forms. Just a few signatures. Transfer of custody, liability waivers, the usual paperwork. She held the tablet toward him. Kareem reached for it and felt the sting in his neck. His hand flew to the injection site, but Rebecca was already stepping back, her expression sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Kareem. Really." Her voice was already getting distant. "But we can't have you causing problems during transport. You understand. It's just procedure." The world was tilting, vision blurring. Whatever she'd injected him with was fast-acting, professional grade. "Batigal, go suck your mother," Kareem managed. But his tongue was thick, words slurring. He tried to stand to fight, but his body wasn't responding. His legs buckled, his vision narrowed to a tunnel. Rebecca's face swam in and out of focus, still sympathetic, still professional. But as she caught him, as his weight collapsed against her and her arms wrapped around him to ease him down, he felt something else. Her hand on his face, cradling his cheek like she had a days ago, gentle, tender, claiming. "Sleep well." Her voice was an echo now, but he could feel her breath against his temple, could feel her body supporting his weight. "When you wake up, everything will be different." Her fingers traced along his jawline, the touch he'd felt in nightmares. You're mine now, Kareem. My key. My tool. Her lips brushed his temple, almost tender. My Kareem. Then darkness. But even in that darkness, even as consciousness fled, he could still feel her. Still smell jasmine and danger. Still hear her voice wrapping around his name like possession. And the worst part of him didn't want her to let go. Part of him wanted to surrender completely. Part of him understood that he'd already been claimed. A key, her key, and keys didn't get to choose which doors they opened. Kareem woke to the sensation of movement, not the smooth acceleration of a ship under control flight. This was rougher, violent, turbulent, the kind of movement that came from evasive maneuvers or atmospheric entry or combat. Something had gone very wrong. His head pounded with the mother of all headaches, not just pain, but a deep, nauseating throb that spoke of chemical sedation. His mouth tasted like copper and industrial solvent. His body felt heavy, sluggish, disconnected. How long had he been out? Could it be hours or days? He tried to sit up and discovered he couldn't move properly. His body was pressed against cushioning on all sides. Everything was dark except for a faint emergency light above his head. A shipping crate. They'd put him in a life pod shipping crate. The realization cut through the drug fog. Life pods were designed for emergency evacuation. Minimal life support. If this was in a cargo hold, if the ship was damaged, he could be stuck here while the vessel tore itself apart. Panic spiked. His breath came faster. The pod's recycled air tasted stale and thin. Focus. His grandmother's voice. Panic kills faster than any enemy. Breathe, yeah? Think. The ship lurched violently. Kareem felt himself thrown against the restraints hard enough to bruise. Warning lights flashed. Alarms sounded, muffled through the crate's insulation. Damage alerts. Structural integrity warnings. Another lurch, this time accompanied by a sound like metal tearing. Hull plating being ripped away by atmospheric friction or weapons fire. The ship was dying. Kareem's analytical mind cut through the panic and drug fog. Life pod crate. Unknown ship. Not Rebecca's transport. Under attack or experiencing major system failure, which meant something had intercepted them. Pirates maybe, or a rival faction. Maybe someone had decided to steal him. His hands found the crate's emergency release. He pulled the lever. Nothing happened. The mechanism was jammed, damaged from whatever impacts the ship was taking. Think, his grandmother again. You smarter than this box. Find the pattern. Kareem felt along the crate's interior. Found the access panel for the pod systems. Emergency power, life support, communications. He understood systems, especially ship systems at the level of electrons and logic gates. Could see patterns in hardware that others miss. All due to wanting to be a space racer since he was knee-high. The emergency release had a mechanical backup, a solenoid that could be triggered with the right voltage spike. He rerouted power from the life support reserves, built up charge in the communication system's capacitors, overloaded them beyond their safety margins, then dumped it all through the release mechanism in a single carefully timed pulse. The solenoid fired with a crack of ozone. The crate seal hissed open. Kareem pushed his way out into a cargo hold that looked like a war zone. Emergency lighting bathed everything in strobing red. Smoke filled the air, acrid chemical. Sparks cascaded from ruptured conduits like dying fireworks. The ship's artificial gravity was fluctuating. Kareem felt himself go light, then heavy, then light again. Around him, packed in identical crates, were supplies, medical equipment, life support processors, water reclamation systems, the kind of cargo colonies desperately needed, the kind of cargo worth stealing. Kareem's mind clicked through implications. This wasn't Rebecca's transport. This was a cargo vessel, and someone had pirated it, which meant somewhere on this ship were criminals, thieves, pirates who'd stolen him along with the cargo without knowing what they'd acquired. The ship lurched again. Kareem grabbed a support strut. Through the bulkhead, he could hear weapons fire, pulse cannons firing at range. They were being chased. He made his way across the cargo hold, stepping over broken crates and spilled supplies. His engineering mind cataloged damage. Power conduits severed, hull breaches sealed with emergency patches, structural support stressed beyond safety margins. The ship was dying. Hours left, maybe less. He found a corridor leading toward the bow, followed the sound of voices and emergency alarms toward the bridge. The corridor was chaos. Emergency lights strobing, smoke reducing visibility, systems failing in cascading sequence. He found 4 people on the bridge, 3 women and 1 man, all focused on keeping the ship alive. A brickhouse woman with honey-colored skin was at the pilot's controls, her hands moving with fluid precision. She was flying through atmospheric turbulence that required constant micro-adjustments. Her face was set in concentration, beads of sweat on her forehead. Another woman, espresso skin, sharp features, dark hair pulled back in a tactical braid, stood at the tactical station, managing weapons and defense systems with calm efficiency. Former military, Kareem's instinct said. The man, Taiwanese features, scarred hands, was coordinating between them, calling out readings and threats with tactical precision. His voice was steady despite the chaos. A third woman, Asian features, organized even in crisis, was managing operations, her fingers flying across multiple displays as she tried to keep cascading failures from becoming catastrophic. Pirates, professional ones, the kind who didn't leave witnesses. But his attention was drawn to the main display, and what he saw there made his blood run cold. They were inside a gas giant. The viewport showed swirling clouds of toxic atmosphere, oranges and browns and sickly yellows. Lightning storms flashed in the distance, electrical discharges powerful enough to fry electronics, pressure gradients visible as bands of different density, temperature variations that could stress metal beyond tolerance, wind shears that could flip a vessel end over end, and the ship's structural integrity was at 53% and falling. They were going to die in here, all of them, crushed or electrocuted or torn apart. We can't stay in this atmosphere much longer, Kareem said, his Jamaican accent thick from the drugs still in his system. Pressure gonna crush us like a tin can. All 4 pirates spun toward him, weapons appearing in hands, but only 2 with practiced speed and 1 with clumsy reflexes. 4 weapons, 4 professionals, 4 people who would kill him without hesitation. Kareem raised his hand slowly, non-threatening, cooperative. Easy, he said. I'm just cargo. Got sealed in a crate down in the hold. Wasn't supposed to wake up. Who are you? Said the demanding brickhouse woman at the pilot's controls. Her weapon didn't waver. Kareem Campbell. And before anyone pulls a trigger, you should know I can fix your ship. Unless you'd rather die in about. His eyes moved to the hull integrity display for a fraction of a second. An hour or less when the pressure finishes what the storm started. She followed up with, how did you get aboard my ship? Was being transported to a research facility. I am guessing the private transport got hijacked. I woke up in your cargo hold when the ship started dying, which was some seriously impressive piloting, Captain. He let the title hang, fishing for a name, but Brickhouse completely dismissed him. Research facility, the Taiwanese man repeated, skeptical. What kind of research? The kind that pays well and doesn't ask questions. Kareem lowered his hand slightly. But that doesn't matter right now. What matters is, you got about less than an hour before the hull fails. And from what I'm seeing on those displays, you can't go up and you can't stay down, Kareem said calmly. Amara, the Taiwanese man's voice full of concern, offering data. Look at the damage reports. The sharp-featured woman gestured to a cascade of system failures scrolling across a secondary display. Hull integrity failing in 3 points. Life support at 60%. Engines overheating. We've got 64 minutes at best, and that's being generous with ourselves. 47, Kareem said. Only if you throttle back the engines. You're burning through your reactor shielding, running them that hot. The Taiwanese man was suddenly close, his weapon pressed against Kareem's temple with the steady calm of someone who's done it before and understands exactly what it means. You know too much about our systems for someone who just woke up in a cargo crate. Who are you really? Kareem didn't flinch. He looked at the Taiwanese man with the same measured calm, his hands still raised, his mind working visibly behind his eyes. You move like military. The woman moves like special operations. His gaze tracked to her. This whole operation is too coordinated to be random opportunists. And you're too observant to be random cargo, Taiwanese man said. Last chance. Told you who I am, Kareem said. Was designated Asset K7 at a government black site until 3 days ago. Some people with considerable resources decided I was useful for a project I have no interest in being part of. They drugged me. Were transporting me to Elysium Station. A pause. Looks like you stole me before I arrived. We stole medical equipment, the clumsy Asian woman who fumbled her firearm earlier said. Not people. Lucky me then. His eyes moved back to the integrity display, and for the first time something flickered across his face that wasn't calculation. Genuine concern. Look, interrogate me after I stop your ship from becoming an expensive coffin, or shoot me now and figure out the repairs yourselves. But decide fast, because we don't have 43 minutes if you keep arguing. Amara studied him. He could be corporate security. He could be an intelligence asset still running his assignment. He could be exactly what he said he was. A man who'd been shipped against his will and woke up in the wrong place entirely, grabbing for any leverage that might keep him alive. Something in the way he kept reading the displays bothered her. Not the competence of it, the familiarity. Like a man who'd spent years learning to read the condition of things by looking at them. Ships, situations, people. Because his survival had depended on it. You said you can fix the ship, Amara said. How do you know what's wrong with it? Because Amara, given a smile to her. Racing ships have always been my hobby. I even raced in the 515 O-Belter Comet event as an engineer before everything went to shit 14 years ago. I kept my skills up during my last contract. Right now, I can hear the harmonics in the vibration. Environmental processor has a slow leak. You're losing oxygen at a rate that becomes serious in about 28 minutes. And your reactor shielding is degraded from running too hot during atmospheric entry. The clumsy Asian woman pulled up diagnostics without being asked. Her fingers moved quickly, then slowed. He's right, she said quietly. All of it. A silence settled over the bridge. Brickhouse Amara watched Kareem's face for the tell of a man who'd memorized the right answers to give. The too perfect timing of prepared intelligence. The micro-satisfaction of hitting the mark. She didn't find it. What she found instead was something she hadn't expected. His eyes had found hers. And something in Kareem Campbell's expression did a thing that made the skin on the back of Amara's neck come alive. The professional neutrality he'd been wearing, steady and calculated and serving him well, cracked. Just for a heartbeat, just for the space between two breaths. Like a moth slipping on a man who didn't know anyone was close enough to see underneath it. She recognized the thing behind it. Not recognition of her face, recognition of something else. Something that made his breathing change, made his jaw tighten, with the effort of containing a reaction he clearly hadn't prepared for. The kind of recognition that happens when you've been carrying something impossible alone for years, and you look at a stranger, and you understand, without knowing, how that they're carrying the same impossible thing. Kareem's mouth opened, closed. His eyes dropped for a fraction of a second, to her chest, to the pendant at her throat, the hand-carved wood her father had pressed into her palm the last time she'd seen him. Kareem looked at it the way a man in open ocean looks at light. You flew through that storm, he said. His voice had changed, quieter, stripped of its performance. The calculation was still there, but something raw had moved up underneath it. Atmospheric vectors that shouldn't exist. Timing that can't be calculated because the windows are too short. And your crew, his gaze moved across the bridge, taking in the espresso skin, precise movements of her body. The Taiwanese man's bearing. They didn't just follow orders. They believed, like something in your voice made doubt physically impossible. Nobody spoke. Amara's hand moved before she decided to move it, reaching for her father's pendant, her fingers closing around the warm wood. The moment she touched it, Kareem's eyes tracked the movement with the precision of a man watching the only fixed point in a spinning room. "You see it," he said, not a question. "In the edges of your vision, when the pressure peaks, when you think about..." He stopped himself, his jaw working. "When you think about people you've lost." The bridge felt 5 degrees colder. Amara's pulse was loud in her own ears. "How do you know that?" Her voice came out harder than she intended, edged with something between authority and the particular fear of being understood by someone who shouldn't be able to understand you. Kareem looked at her the way a man looks over the edge of a cliff when he's already decided to jump, but his body hasn't caught up yet. "Because," he said, each word placed with the care of a man building something fragile, "I have seen it too." The silence was absolute. 7 points, arranged in impossible geometry, something at the center that hurts to look at directly, makes your eyes slide away, makes your head ache if you try to hold the focus. He exhaled slowly. "I've been seeing it for some time now. Started thinking I was losing my mind, then started thinking the things I could do because of it were real enough, that maybe it wasn't madness." Amara thought of Europa, of her father's pendant, warm against her chest, and 7 points of light arranging themselves in the dark like stars that didn't belong in any constellation she'd ever charted. She told herself it was grief, exhaustion, a mind creating patterns to cope with loss. But this stranger, this man who'd appeared from nowhere, who could assess a dying ship's damage by looking at a bulkhead, who'd been shipped unconscious by a government black site, he was standing in her bridge describing it in the exact vocabulary she'd never spoken aloud to anyone. "You're lying," Taiwanese man said, but there was uncertainty in it now. He'd heard something in Kareem's voice that even professional suspicion couldn't quite dismiss. "I wish I was," Kareem replied. His eyes didn't leave Amara's. "I wish this was drugs still working through my system, or stress or madness or something I could file and close. But it's not. And if you see it too." His voice dropped until it was barely sound at all. "Then we're both in something much larger than stolen medical equipment and government security." "What kind of something?" the sharp-featured woman asked. Her weapon was still leveled, but her voice had sharpened with something more precise than suspicion. "Interest," Kareem calculated. Amara could see it. Could see him weighing how much truth served him against how much truth made him too dangerous to keep alive. "The kind of thing," he said finally, "where people disappear, where intelligence assets get shipped across the solar system in cargo crates, where certain people can do things that shouldn't be possible, and the government doesn't want to study it. They want to own it." He paused. "The kind of thing where flying through an impossible storm and surviving doesn't make you lucky. It makes you something someone will come looking for." The hull groaned around them. The storm outside pressed against the viewport in slow, massive spirals. Amara's pendant was warm against her palm, warmer than it should have been, warmer than the ambient temperature of the bridge could account for. She heard her mother's voice, years and miles away. "You speak, and the world listens. That's power, child." Her father's. "Some things can't be explained with science. Not yet, maybe not ever." She'd chosen the rational explanation for most of her life, the explainable, the boundaries of what a person could be told by reasonable evidence. She'd just flown through a gas giant storm that should have killed all 5 of them. "Marcus," she said quietly, lower your weapon. Marcus and the sharp-featured woman stood down, not relaxing, not trusting, but recognizing the order and the reasoning behind it. The intel from their last job had been sitting uneasily with all of them for days, each detail lining up against Kareem's account in ways that felt less like coincidence and more like something being assembled. Against every instinct built from betrayal and blood, something shifted toward this stowaway who should have known nothing at all. Amara met Kareem's eyes. "You said you were being transported," she said. "By who?" End of chapter 3. Kareem Campbell made his choice. Now he's on a ship flying through Jupiter's storms, a stowaway with secrets that could reshape the solar system. But Kareem's just one piece of the pattern. 4 days earlier, on a failing merchant vessel called the Morning Star, Captain Amara Dumas was seeing the same impossible symbol, the same 7-pointed geometry that shouldn't exist. And she was 72 hours from losing everything she'd fought to protect. 2 people, same pattern, different cages. In Chapter 4, The Voice, you'll discover why some debts can't be paid in credits, and why the woman who leads this crew might be more dangerous than anything hunting them. If you have enjoyed this, hit subscribe. Chapter 4. Parts will drop every other Tuesday. Don't miss what happens when Amara stops playing by the rules. And if you want to know how we got here, Chapter 1 and 2 are already posted on the channel. This is the Veil Constant. The pattern is spreading, and no one is safe.